Hello to all my people, and if you're watching live, checking us out on YouTube, or listening on your favorite podcast provider, you are most definitely my people. Welcome to another and special edition of Botch Spots and Chair Shots After Dark. I am your host, a chef by trade and a mark by choice. I am the Will Gray, and joining me tonight, as always, is my partner in crime. He is the belt collector. He is all things HR when it comes to Wrestle Talk. He is Big Mike the Hill. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing all right. I've been waiting for this. Been pretty excited for this one.
I'm excited for it as well. I'm going to settle in. Now I got those, I got the energy out of me. I'm going to rein it in a little bit, take it back from like a 12, back down to an 8 or a 9. And you told me before we went on the air, you were like, hey, like, I want to tee this one off. And I was like, good, because honestly, this might be the least prepared I've ever been for a podcast episode, but it's Chris Kanyon. So I was like, Mike is going to be my boy. So here we go, Mike. I'm going to pass it off, but I'm going to start just by saying this one simple phrase, dude. And then you're off to the races for us, man. Who better than Kanyon?
Nobody better than Kanyon. All right. I want to start this off, of course, for most of you that might know about what happened with Chris Kanyon. We watch wrestling as a distraction to our everyday lives, to entertain us and keep us going. But at the end of the day, these guys are also people and understand being away from their families and everything else. We've touched upon other people like, Owen Hart, what their family might be going through after all that. We touched upon China, another Chris, and stuff like that. And of course, Brian Pillman. Depression is not a joke. But once again, these guys are people that travel the world 365. They're doing their damnedest to entertain you. And we could be some cruel bastards on the internet. But at the same time, like I said, these guys are people with the same problems we have. They got to worry about bills. They got to worry about all that stuff and depression. And it doesn't show all the time. As we're about to talk about Kanyon, how it doesn't show. So that's pretty much what I want to start off with.
That was very well said. I want to take a second to thank the Alpha Wolf, Sean B. He just gave us 5 tier 1 subs. And later in the episode, I'll explain how important that is because we have a subathon coming for Rivet City Radio. And what he just did was add more time to this huge subathon that we're going to be doing. And towards the end of the episode, I'll break it down as to what Sean just did to me. But Mike, let's kind of start at the top with this. When you think about Kanyon as the wrestler, and we'll do what we do it After Dark, we'll tiptoe, into that dark side of what happened and some of the things he had to hide and the mental health stuff that goes into this side of pro wrestling. This is this is what After Dark is about. It's like the dirty stuff that nobody really wants to talk about.
It's our version of Dark Side of the Ring.
Bingo. Evan Husney was a huge influence on me when I started looking this up. I'm in the process right now of trying to secure a Patreon exclusive interview. That'll be my first Botch Spots and Chair Shots After Dark that will be geared specifically to one of these topics. And I'm not saying which one yet, but we have had an episode about one of the interviews I'm going to be securing. But specifically tonight, we're going to talk about Chris Kanyon. So let's look at the wrestler himself. When I say his name, when I think of his work, do you think of Chris Kanyon, the WWF guy, WWE guy who came in after the invasion, Champagne Chris Kanyon? Or do you think of like the hard-hitting indie guy before the indie guys, Chris Kanyon, like the WCW Chris Kanyon, that dude who was way ahead of his fucking time, Chris Kanyon? Where do you go with it?
So, most people talk about how his first ever. Thank you, Cam. Thank you, brother. So most people talk about how his first match was Diesel in the WWF against Diesel and Shawn Michaels, which that is not true. He had a match before that. That he debuted on. Trying to remember who it was, but right now it's not ringing quite yet.
I'm sure it'll come there. We'll get to it.
Yeah.
It's a long hour. It's a marathon, a sprint. We got this.
He actually his wrestling debut was in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and then he had that was his wrestling debut, and then he had a match against Shawn Michaels and Diesel. It was a tag match.
Hola, mano.
And he also, what most people don't know, second ever appearance on WWF television. He had a IC title match against Diesel.
You're way more prepared for me than I love that. That's why I knew this was going to be an easy episode, because I was like, I know Mike did his homework for this one. He was the one that he brought this up.
Yep.
Rafa, I'm super glad you're here tonight, man. Looking at Chris Kanyon's his come-uppins, so to speak, when you look at the people that he came up through, you look at Smoky Mountain Wrestling, right? That's Dr. Tom Pritchard. That's Jim Cornette. That's Bruce Pritchard. Like some of the guys who worked in that. When you think about the territories, and I bring it up on pretty much every show that I'm fucking on ever and ever, and amen. And it's like, I live for territory wrestling. And the one thing Jim Cornette did do was with Smoky Mountain Wrestling, he gave us that last little extension of pro wrestling territories. And for Chris Kanyon to cut his teeth there, that's such a vital role. Because think about the people that were there. Kane, Undertaker, the Legion of Doom, once again, Jim Cornette, Bruce Pritchard, Dr. Tom, like so many great guys came through at the same time. It was like Chris Jericho, Lance Storm. Like, think about, he was just in the mix of greatness, like at the core of when it started. And then you've got Chris Kanyon.
Yeah, like I said, like you said earlier, he was the indie guy before the indie guy. He was doing all these crazy. He was pretty much inventive in that. He trained multiple people. Most people don't know he was also the stunt double for King in Ready to Rumble.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, fuck yeah, Ready to Rumble, man. Man, I love Ready to Rumble.
He was.
You know who else is in Ready to Rumble? Who's the greatest WCW champion of all time, Mike?
David Arquette.
Yes, damn right, it's fucking David Arquette.
He trained the likes of most of the talent, like not talent, but I want to say the
extras and the actors in the movies and stuff, right? Yeah.
He trained David Arquette, Jay Leno, and where's that at?
It was the dude who played the main character. I can't remember his name either, though. Somebody in the chat who played the main wrestler in Ready to Rumble. He was a really well-known actor. I just can't remember. When you look at that point, Kanyon was that guy. He was that glue that held the movie to the wrestling world. He kind of helped, like, he was the, what do you call it? The consultant. Like when they did the movie Burnt, they had Michelin chefs come in to be the consultant for the kitchen to make sure that they were doing it right. And when they did Ready to Rumble, they had Chris Kanyon as one of the producers to help make sure it was done right. Mortis and Kane would have been a great match. Trey, I'll do some research for you. I'll see if I can find that Smoky Mountain Wrestling stuff, because I'm sure Chris Kanyon and Adam Bomb worked together at some point in Smoky Mountain.
It was his idea to use the triple cage that was in Ready to Rumble actually on a pay-per-view for WCW. That was his idea to do. It was his idea to be thrown off as well. Oh, God. I wrote everything down. I should have been a little bit more, through everything here.
Dude, my penmanship is so fucking bad, dude. Let me show you. I'll fan back a page or two. Look at my notes. Like, dude, there's no way. Like, my scribble is terrible.
It's got to be better than mine.
Like, my penmanship is rough.
And then you have the well, anyways, they had to find something for him to do, and he went by what was that name of the character that he was? That was it was kind of like Mortal Kombat. Well,
that was the Mortis character, yeah.
Yeah, Mortis,
it was the same time as like Glacier and stuff like that, dude.
Yep.
That was WCW's answer to everybody having a fucking job. WWE had the Repo Man and Duke the Dumpster Drosy, and everybody had a job or a profession. And then WCW was like, nah, bro, our guys, comic book characters. We're going to have a Sub-Zero, and we're going to have a Mortis that looks like a beefed out fucking voodoo doctor.
That's what it was based off. It was Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
The whole thing. And he had a pretty good run. I'm trying to remember the manager, which was also one of his great friends that he actually the only guy that knew it.
Oh, it's Father James Mitchell.
Yes.
He's still active in the NWA, man. Al and I have crossed paths with him many a times in a couple of the NWA shows we've been to. And when we were in North Carolina, he was there. We've also seen him with Impact, and we've seen him at multiple indie shows now. I don't want to say like, he's very old school with the business. You know what I mean? Like, if he's going to talk to you, he has to know you. And to get to know you, somebody has to vouch for you, kind of thing. Yep. Like, which is cool. I completely respect. I'm the old guy on my front porch. You know, that's my fucking gimmick. Get off my lawn. But I respect that about him, because the reason why I haven't been able to hook up with him yet is because I don't know him, and I haven't met someone that knows him yet. You know, like, I'll get there. Fuck it. I'll get that man across the screen from me. I'll interview you, James Mitchell. I don't give a fuck.
He also trained the Young Bucks, and he also trained Brian Cage as well, that are now in AEW.
One of my
very close friends to him as well.
One of my favorite things that he mentions in that Dark Side of the Ring episode are Matt and Nick. And I'm going to be honest, man, I keep talking about this across all the shows. Like, Mike, I have to be honest with you. I have to say this, and I don't want you to judge me as a man or as your friend or as a wrestling fan.
No, go ahead, man.
I think I like the Young Bucks. Sean with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more tier 1 subs.
Jesus.
So that puts us up to 12 today. That's going to be that's a thing. I'll explain what you're doing. You trust me. Get there. Enjoy it. It'll be a ride. It'll be worth it when we get there, guys.
Oh, you already got mine. I kind of subbed off of screen because you weren't live, so I just did
it. Yeah, I counted yours. Yours popped up, and then we had one from earlier, and now Sean has done 10. I love the Young Bucks. I'm the biggest Elite Mark. Sorry, I'm about to start reading the Young Bucks book this week. I was always like, I don't want to go off on a tangent because we are going to talk about Kanyon, so I'll circle it back around to Kanyon for you, Mike. You want to know what sold me on the Young Bucks more than anything? Is the fact that it's not that they run the same kind of match every week, okay? What I figured out about the Young Bucks is Ric Flair talks about it in his documentary. When he would wrestle, he had an A match and a B match and a C match, right? And then he would have it all the way down, D, E, F, G, and he would know going into it, you know, the crowd's kind of dead. I don't want to blow my load in the first night. I've got to work 3 days this week. Tonight's like a G show. Go out there, work an easy 10 minutes, get out safe. I feel like the Young Bucks have started to work like that. It's based, the match you get from the Young Bucks is purely based off of the crowd and the energy and everything that's coming out of the show, minus their big blow-off matches, their ladder matches and blood and guts and that stuff. That's totally different. But you watch their day-to-day matches, they run the same equation every time, and you get bigger, badder Young Bucks based on how the crowd is reacting. So I get behind that because I'm like, I get it. If the crowd's not there, you're not going to sacrifice everything. You're going to go out and play the hits. do the Meltzer driver and fucking super kick into tomorrow and like do all the. So circling back to Kanyon, I like the Young Bucks now, Mike. I can't say that I don't like them anymore.
In their matches when they do moves, just they legitly they pay homage to him, and you don't see it, but they pay homage.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about, Shadow. That's how we got to the Bucks, was because we were talking about how Kanyon was the first person to train him, and we're about to go off on the machine Brian Cage because I got things to say about that dude also.
Yeah, he also Brian Cage, he does use this every now and then. Better than Cage, so he uses the who's better than Kanyon. So they pay homage to him, which is
absolutely
great.
They do.
Yeah.
So Cage, my big thing with him was I felt like for a long time AEW wasn't using him right. Like they kind of, he was that. All right, this is something I'll say. Scows doesn't like it when I say these things, so I hope Scows don't get mad. I love you nonetheless. Sometimes we disagree, and that's okay. Different doesn't mean wrong. We don't yuck any yums at Rivet City Radio. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm going to be completely honest. I lost my train of Cage, here we go. I got it back. It immediately came right back to me. When you look at Brian Cage looks like a WWE superstar. He's big, he's muscular, he looks good in his tights, he can flex, and he's like, oh, I'm Brian Cage, I'm the machine. He looks like a WWE superstar. The Young Bucks are pro wrestlers. Kanyon was the blend of those two things. He was the blend of a WWE superstar. He understood character work and he understood how to make the machine mold to what you needed it to do. But he also was the innovator. Jesus, words are hard. I do this for a living, ladies and gentlemen. The innovator of offense. So like he was also, like I said, the indie guy before it was indie guys. When I did this show on WCW, World Championship Wreckage, my primer I do with Dad Hat. I said Kanyon was Kenny Omega before Kenny Omega, because think about how Omega works. He's that slightly bigger than average, like middleweight. He's not a big heavyweight. You know what I mean? He's kind of in between. He can fly like a high flyer, but he's also got innovative ground offense. He can ground and pound. He's got multiple flares. He can do multiple types of dance, if you will. Omega can do lucha libre. He can do Japanese strong style, traditional pro wrestling with a capital R. Kanyon was the same way. Kanyon started doing this in the mid-90s, and people were saying he was ahead of his time. Omega does it now, and they say Omega is one of the greatest people in the world to ever do it. Do you see the connection I'm trying to make, or am I completely crazy for this?
No, I got you. Kanyon was ahead of his time. I mean, the thing that bothers me the most, which we're going to be getting into the other stuff pretty soon. So I have some really messed up things. So we're after dark. So I have some pretty cruel and unforgivable things to say about Ric Flair and John Cena.
Kanyon absolutely should have been a world champion, Sean. I agree 1,000%.
Yep. I have the WCW. I mean, I know I have the WCW one, but I do have the United States Championship. Still technically different design. He still held his belt. Different name plate on it, but we're not going to talk about this guy yet because this is going to be a ways away. Yeah, he was ahead of his time. WWE, Vince seen something in him. The Undertaker backed him like 110%, and said that he was probably one of the best people in the ring to either put someone over, put himself over. He was over without people knowing he was over. That was the great thing about him.
What is it? He's EC3. They say he's the over man because he's over, man.
Yeah.
That's Chris Kanyon, right? That's kind of what you're saying. He was just, no matter what, Chris Kanyon was popular for some reason because he was Chris Kanyon, whether it was fucking Mortis or the dude with the champagne bottles or, any version of Kanyon was popular because of who he was.
Yes. I mean, he had phenomenal matches. I mean,
oh, he absolutely did. Dude was a power. He was a workhorse, man. Everything he did was great. If you go back and watch his matches, and I have recency bias, I'll be the first person to admit it, because with us going into this, I rewatched Dark Side. I went back and rewatched the WCW episode me and Dad Hat did on him. I rewatched some of his work, but like I didn't sit down and write out, we're going to talk about this match and this match and this match. Like, no, I didn't do that for this episode because I want this show to be much more raw than what it has been. If we're not doing live interviews with people involved in these stories, I want us to, the WCW thing is we do WCW history as fans remember it. And what I want this to be for After Dark is I want us to do our real interpretations of how we remember these things happening in pro wrestling as they happen live.
We're gonna get choked, or like we're gonna stumble on our words. This is not scripted. This is us actually talking. This is the I got stuff written down just to kind of refresh my memory on.
Well, that's because this is technically your episode to host, my friend. I'm just here for color commentary at this point.
Wasn't for you, I'd be screwed. But he was in WCW. He was in ECW. He was in
Smoky Mountain.
Smoky Mountain.
Yeah.
He was also in the USAA WA, the USWA. And not many people knew he was in ECW.
He was a journeyman.
Yeah.
Like when you think about what a journeyman means in pro wrestling, like you think about guys, especially now, the interview that I have dropping tomorrow is with Sean Donovan, the messiah of old school. He's wrestled NWA, GCW, pretty much everywhere that's anywhere. He's done, enhancement talent for WWE, AEW, Impact. Like he's worked everywhere. And like the things that he talked about a lot of this, like that old school mentality and a lot of the things, because he came up at the same time Chris Kanyon was in the business, that last of the territory days and stuff. And that's the journeyman mentality is some of these guys don't ever get signed to a WWE. They work all of these places and they make a living, and a great living, doing pro wrestling, but they don't ever get that major contract from a WWE or that major contract from an AEW. Matt Cardona is the perfect example of somebody who's doing it right now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and Matt Cardona, he's fucking killing it too. He was... Kanyon was a WCW champion with Bam Bam Bigelow and DDP, the Freebird rule.
What's up, Jinbug? Thanks for stopping by.
He was in, of course, ECW, but he was in ECW and to the WCW where he settled down. So it was the USAA, then he went to ECW, then he settled down in WCW before they got bought out. And then he went into, and you knew they had plans for him. He was a double champion the first 6 months.
Was right out of the rip, dude. Right as soon as the invasion happened, he got both those titles.
Yep, he had the WCW United States, and then he had the WWF Tag Team title, which he was tag team champions with DDP.
Let me ask you a question. When you think of Kanyon, though, do you have a specific title that comes to mind? Do you have one that you always think of? And there's a reason why I asked this question.
I would say the WCW US Championship, just because, when I first think of it, I think of the WCW tag.
Yeah.
But the latest one would be the WCW US Championship, because that was the one that you mainly see.
The reason why I ask is because Shadow said a few comments back, I don't believe he should have been world champion, but always kind of the bridesmaid, if that makes sense. And he did hold the cruiserweight title as well. But the point of what Shadow was making, I think, is that my point with you that you just made by thinking of the U.S. heavyweight title. And my point was going to be, I always think of the U.S. heavyweight title. So you always think of those mid-tier, mid-card championships. And I've said it a million times again, like there's nothing wrong with the mid-cards. You have to have the mid-card for the main event to mean something. So him holding those mid-card titles, is he once again, we're going to add another box to the check in the conversation. Did he not only was that quintessential journeyman, he worked everywhere that he needed to work that mattered, was he also that quintessential like workhorse champion where if you needed a good mid-card reign, you could slap the belt on Chris Kanyon? Vince, mi papi está aquí, ¿cómo estás, mano?
I'm gonna say this. I disagree because we have to understand this was in the beginning of if he had done everything that I'm gonna mention the name, but we're on after dark. So Benoit and Eddie did, and worked out, got that physique, and boom, then absolutely he would have been world champion. Vince needs to see the physique. That was the only problem. And he had it, but he wasn't as big as Vince wanted. If that makes any sense.
Vince, Will, you speaking Spanish to me will forever pop me. 1000%. I will work Duolingo every day if I have to get my Spanish back to conversationally fluent, just so one day you and I can do creation conversations from beginning to end in nothing but Spanish, just to fuck with everybody. Just once I want to do it. God, can you imagine how fucking pissed, not pissed, Travis and Matt wouldn't get mad. They would just be blown away that I was able to pull it off. But I'm going to pull it off where one day you and I just speak Spanish the entire time, Vince, from beginning to end.
And the other thing that not many people know, he was actually a physical therapist as well before he joined the WWE.
You know who else is a physical therapist from the same era in WCW and has the same kind of look and appeal and everything that goes into it? Crowbar.
Oh shit! You know what? I used to get them mixed up. I'm not kidding you. As a kid, when I watched it, I thought Crowbar was Kanyon and Kanyon was Crowbar.
I think Kanyon truly hit his potential from the world because he was very much in the closet, and the bigger he got, he was afraid of being exposed for his lifestyle. You want to use that as a segue to kind of talk about that? Get a Spanish announce table and put somebody through it. We have a show for that, the table spot. Like, that'll be the one. That's where we put people through tables. This is Botch Spots and Chair Shots. We're here to chill and talk about wrestling and kind of the spooky side of wrestling. But Shadow brings up a good point with his sexuality. And this is one of those after dark moments because we'll talk about it. When you think about the era in pro wrestling, they say it in the Dark Side of the Ring episodes. I keep shouting them out. They're one of the few free shout outs I'll give constantly. They do absolutely stellar work. But when they talk about it in the episode, they say if people knew that was the case and they found out you were gay, they would put you with ridiculous gimmicks, or you wouldn't be allowed to use the locker rooms and stuff like that. So Kanyon had a terrible, that was such a fear for him because he didn't want to be ostracized for this, because in the 1990s, he very much had to worry about it, to the point that it was playing with his mental psyche that his friends and family didn't realize why he was losing his mind. And mental health, we joke a lot and we play a lot of games, and I dedicate a lot of time to having fun and partying, but when it boils down to it, guys, mental health is so.
Don't forget about the religion part. Don't forget about his religion part too.
Well, he was raised Catholic, right?
Yeah, everything was bugging him. You have to understand. Yeah. Out it, just like in the Dark Side of the Ring, a bunch of gay porn came out of his the other I can't remember, Father Mitchell. He's like, oh, that's him. Oh my God. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, between the religion, being gay, and he actually came out to somebody and they said, don't let that evil come to you, blah 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 blah. He was dealing with a lot between being Catholic, between being gay, especially for the time, it wasn't what you would say. It would be frowned upon. Like you said, wouldn't be allowed in the locker room. And
So let me ask you a question then. Let me segue this, and I'll be the connecting factor because I keep linking it to wrestling in 2023 and how in the mid 90s his wrestling style wasn't prepared for it, so he never got the world title reign. But if he was here in 2023, he would very much be in title contention. He checks all the boxes of current world champions. So let's look at it like this also. If Kanyon was in wrestling in 2023, and there's still a long way to go. Allyship. When I say all of my people, I mean you are most definitely all my people. Everybody is welcome here. But my point is like in 2023, fighting the good fight is still happening, but you've got people that are open and out. AC Mac was just on the show a little over a year ago, the first openly gay world champion. He was the IWTV independent wrestling world champion. And he came on the show and talked about it, how it was 2021 at the time and how he was just now the first openly gay world champion in 2021. So think about Chris Kanyon's situation in the mid to late 90s and fast forward 20 years. He wouldn't have to have those worries and those mental health hardships and some of the stuff he was having to fight through in the 90s, because in 2023, in 2023, like I said, there is still a good fight going to get equality for everything, but it is much more accepted in 2023 than it was in the mid 90s.
Yeah. I'm looking at Trey. I'm gonna acknowledge a comment here. Patterson was out. People knew. They knew he was gay. He was out. But he wasn't openly out, like where the fans knew and everybody else knew. It was
an insider thing, right? Like only certain people at that point knew about Pat.
Yeah. So he was open, but he wasn't out. If that makes any sense.
No. It was still very closed and only certain people knew.
Yeah.
In Kanyon's situation, he was afraid for anybody to find out. And that psychological warfare with himself played into the existence of his life from his WCW breakout all the way through till the end. Unfortunately, he fought with those demons the whole time.
So talking about that, all right, so I think it was sometime in, I can't remember the year, but he wound up, he messed his knee up and he was out for a while. So
was that when he was in Impact and shit? Was that much later in his career?
No. This was in WWF. He had a dark match with Randy Orton and blew his knee out. So he left, I think, for 4 months, rehabbed, and then they put him in OVW. So when they put him in OVW, he wound up messing up his shoulder, and then he took antibiotics that wound up building fluid in his lungs. He couldn't breathe correctly. He was, so once again, he rehabbed his shoulder, and then he used steroids to, get it. Not like he put it in the muscle where you're technically supposed to do that to rehab quicker. He did come back, but then they put him on a bunch of dark matches. He pitched, and this is in his book. He pitched the idea to creative about him being an openly gay character, be himself on there. So this is why people knew he was gay. But once again, it was like Pat Patterson. But he wanted to show the world, which they didn't want. Which brings us to the Boy George part, where he was completely pummeled by The Undertaker. Most people would say that's a spot. but even the audience and everybody else that had seen it, that was a beatdown.
It's tough, man. Like when you get into the politics side of it, and that's what's you get into it. And when you get into indie wrestling, you still see a lot of the gatekeeping and stuff and the politicking. And if somebody doesn't like you, you get bumped down the card. You might lose your spot altogether. And it just sucks that it could still happen at the level of WWE.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, the Dr. Pepper got me to bubble guts.
And just like I said before, and like I said, like our first episode ever of After Dark, they say it in the dark side of the ring. If you are out, you get bumped down, and it takes forever for you to come back up. Unfortunately, Kanyon didn't. What they did is they kept putting him in dark matches till he went to Velocity, the C show, and then wound up completely being fired.
So, once again, trigger warnings for those listening. So you take into consideration he has to deal with the battle of the demons with the sexuality side of things and being a pro wrestler. And then on top of it, switch pin to other hand. Two hands now. You've got two things he's fighting because he's fighting with the demons of his sexuality and he's dealing with addiction because he's had to fight through injury. Steroids to help rehab, and then you start dealing with an addiction to substance abuse as well as fighting demons of his sexuality. Like at this point in Kanyon's career, especially rounding out the late 90s into the 2000s, the ACL tear, I think it was an ACL tear when he hurt his knee. I think that might be the same time you're talking about in 01. That's when you really saw the turn happen because he had to get on painkillers for the surgeries, and he was on the steroid shots. I think we might be literally be talking about the same thing, but that's the perks of being a live television show. You think about the fact that he's dealing with, the substance abuse and the sexuality side of things. The man it was such an uphill battle. There wasn't therapists weren't an active thing, and, dealing with things like clinical bipolar and stuff like that. WWE in the early 2000s, there weren't very many professions at all that just openly had therapists available to talk about your mental health. In pro wrestling, especially, there were almost none. Like you would almost never hear about people talking about how important mental health is. But now, if you look at it, exactly, Sean, he was dealing with so much. And in 1999, they would look at him and they would say this, and this is my least favorite thing for every male in the chat. I weep for you every time somebody ever says this because they look at us and you know what they say, Mike?
Be a man, man up.
Just man up. Just man up.
Yeah.
What the fuck does that even mean, bro? Like, how do you say that and expect? Yeah.
Keep to yourself, deal with it.
It doesn't make any sense to me because they expect you to be this make-believe. We're taught about how we can't objectify people for sexuality or race or creed or color or any of these things, which is, once again, everyone is my people. But you look at the men of the group, specifically men's mental health, and we get just man up.
Yep.
Like, it's so tough. And Kanyon was having to deal with this every day of his life because he didn't want to talk to people about his sexuality because he was fear he'd be ostracized for it. He didn't want to talk about his mental health for fear of being ostracized for it. He didn't want to talk about his substance abuse problems for fear of being ostracized for it. He heard just man up. And it's such a tough thing when all you're told is just man up.
Well, I mean, I think he had more support than he thought. I think that's what he thought he would get. Even on the dark side of the ring, they talk about how he completely lost it and said something about he was driving to the Scientology museum, whatever it was, and he said that there was a big bright light and the aliens and blah blah blah. But the whole time he was there, he completely lost it. They had to tie him up so he could go to bed, so he could wake up and be normal again. And once again, this is not it. It has to do with mental health, but this is in wrestling, and people don't understand. You have to worry about your spot. You have to worry about being judged on certain shit. You got we're right now, even with the internet, like we are cruel bastards on the internet. We are.
Oh, the internet's mean as shit. The only people meaner than the internet are like 6th grade little boys.
Yeah.
Like 11-year-old, 12-year-old boys are mean as fuck.
Yeah, we could be complete, but once again, most of us are talking about the character itself, which a lot of these guys live, and we don't put that shit together. It goes through like everybody we've talking about so far, besides the Owen Hart one. China dealt with it, depression and anxiety, and then you're living on the road and you're doing all this stuff. You're tired as hell. Drugs did flow through the 90s. Who used them, who didn't, I couldn't really tell you. Well, later on, of course. And then just trying to keep your fucking spot, and then nobody's really realizing it until that day happens. Like just to name a few, besides the ones we've already done.
Hold that up real quick, Al. Don't let that comment go away. Mike, finish what you're saying. I want to come back to Shadow's comment here.
Okay. Just like a test, in which we were talking about doing. Chris Candido, Sonny. You understand, the people in the 90s, early 2000s dealt with way more shit than they do now.
No, you're completely right. Shadow says this isn't show related, but men's mental health is a real pandemic. Crash Holly tests 2 more great examples from Trey. But Shadows, I'm not saying you're wrong though. I'm not saying you're wrong though, because this is a huge part of what we're talking about, because when we talked about Chris Benoit in our first episode, we talked about how his mental health the night everything happened was obviously in question because of the text messages that went out on the phone that was never found. But he was texting people and apologizing for stuff that happened years ago. Like, people's mental health isn't talked about enough, and especially in a field like pro wrestling, because Kanyon never had a chance to talk to people about this. If in the early 2000s people had a chance to talk about their mental health, we may still have a Chris Kanyon. Jason David Frank is another example. Anthony Bourdain just touches my soul as a writer, as a chef. He was such a huge influence on me when I was a young culinarian. He's the reason why I cuffed my jeans, wore high top Converse, like tied my hair back in a red bandana, because I wanted to grow up and be fucking Anthony Bourdain. Instead, I'm more like Hunter Thompson now. But the point of the matter is like substance abuse and Robin Williams. Boom. It was coming to me in my head. People that, the old homage, it's not okay. It's okay to not be okay. Yep. It's okay to not be okay. Robin Williams is another example, like of somebody who seemed perfectly fine on the outside and wasn't. Bourdain is another example, and it wraps around. Chris Kanyon was just like that. He did a great job of wearing the mask and appearing to be fine.
The most entertaining and the funniest people you'll ever meet are the people that hurt the most.
Truth. You're absolutely right.
Now, I do want to say this. Yes, with his mental health, you know about him choking him and completely losing it, destroying his car.
Yeah, they thought Father James Mitchell came out and said, in interviews, not just on Dark Side of the Ring, like there were multiple points towards the end with Chris where he thought that he was going to be killed. He worried that he would lose his life because Chris was going to fucking flip his shit on him.
Yeah, he even had a gun on him.
Yeah.
So when he actually finally came out completely to everybody, not just WWE, not just Father Mitchell. He came out to the Young Bucks. He came out to
Cage and all that stuff.
Yeah. He was doing a little bit better, but he still had his issues. They also mentioned on Dark Side of the Ring after Benoit and he did their moment in at WrestleMania. They did the hug. He ran into the ring, this was off air, of course, and stood up on the turnbuckle, and I don't know what he was doing exactly. I wish we can get the footage of that because that would be amazing. He he got invited to after party, and he goes, thank you for inviting me to the after party, even though you fired me. But understand, a lot of people don't know is that he was getting better. He was doing a little bit better. He was actually becoming more happier. He was doing things like that's when he put over Cage and all that stuff in the ring. Now we're gonna get on the part where he went to the Howard Stern show. Well, first, John Cena and his stuff saying he's not that good. Cena, you have 3 fucking moves, and the only reason why you made it was because the way you looked. That was it.
The prototype, bruh.
Prototype.
I think Cena's one of the greats. He's not in my top 4. He's not in my top 8.
Yeah,
top 10, maybe. I'd put Cena in my top 10.
But
maybe top 12.
Kanyon didn't hear that. Kanyon knew nothing about the interview.
Yeah.
Then they brought it up to him, and then Ric Flair called in and said, John Cena's right. You're just not that good. And would the WWE ever hire him back? Absolutely not. That's what he said. And the face that he had, he went from smiling to completely depressed. And this was in 2007. Now understand, all that stuff that's accumulating after you hear you'll never get hired back. You're not that good. And adding up until the day, all that has to do is sizzle and bake until you finally maybe I'm not that good.
I was thinking, I got 7 people out on my list before I even thought about maybe being like, okay, is this person going to be able to be? So like without thinking about it, I got almost out of my top 10 before even putting John Cena on the list. So I would definitely say maybe top 15 all time with Cena. So I agree with you. One of the greats, not the GOAT. Breaking Point was seeing Orlando Jones' gimmick in TNA. They used to do a lot of really shitty gimmicks.
Yeah.
You said that about Cena. For some reason, my mind started racing. Like, where would I put Cena all time if I really had to?
It was actually in WWE when WWE was going to make, I think it was Orlando Jordan, the first openly gay, and he was like, "Oh my God, they're going to steal my gimmick," because he already pitched it.
Yeah,
and he begged Stephanie to give him that spot. Please let me do this. Oh, I have to reach out to legal and all that stuff. So once again, you go back to the Stephanie McMahon's. Same thing with China. You go to this is the first time with John Cena, of course. Well, John Cena has done some pretty messed up things backstage.
I didn't realize you didn't like Cena this much, bro. How long have you hated Cena?
All right, this is my aspect of it. All right, so with me was I didn't like Cena because the same way with the whole Roman thing. Roman's got the titles for how long and stuff like that. It's like, I understand it. I'm just bored of it. It's time to move on. Cena is how most people feel about Charlotte. Title shot, always on television.
John Cena is your Charlotte Flair?
Huh?
Is John Cena your Charlotte Flair? Like the person just shows up and you're just like, oh, fuck.
Yeah,
Like him again.
What it in the late 2000s, yes. And then I was like, you know something? I respect him. I don't like him, but I respect him. And I did until I heard that interview.
Sean, also a question for you, the TNA stuff. Was that the Dixie Carter regime in TNA when they did that was Dixie Carter? Okay, I was just curious who was if the ownership had transitioned yet or not. You're not the only person, Al. I love Charlotte. You know that. I think she may be the greatest female competitor of all time.
She is the greatest. She's had no star matches. I mean, well, these last couple ones have been pretty. I don't know.
I would love to buy your signed Charlotte. You need to slide in my DMs about that, Shadow. I'll get somebody to donate money to get me that Charlotte if I have to. I would love to own a signed Charlotte. She's one of the few. I've got the program from here it is, Ric Flair's last match that I'm saving because I'm going to get it signed by Flair before it's all said and done.
And you know,
my birthday's soon. That's
on top of it, what gets me the most is that when people were shitting on Flair, I was sitting there going like, the man only knows wrestling and all this stuff. But I never heard the Howard Stern stuff until like literally today. I knew about the Cena one, but I never heard it. And then when I heard it, I was like, fuck you, Cena. And then now I'm hearing the Ric Flair one, and now I don't even know how I feel about him.
I didn't realize. I knew that Cena had said some shit, but I didn't realize like there was many people as passionate about it as you are. Yeah, I do feel like Dixie Carter using that gimmick to get under his skin, not necessarily under his skin. I don't think Dixie Carter was being malicious to Chris Kanyon, but I think when Chris started coming out to other wrestlers and she maybe got wind that WWE was going to be using something like that, I bet Dixie Carter was just like, yo, fuck it, bro. We got to make this happen. You're it right now, Orlando Jones. You're the guy. Like, I feel like Dixie would have been the type of person to do it to put butts in seats. She would have thought it would have been an okay move, business-wise, to beat him to the punch and use the gimmick first. As sad as it is, by the way, that they would utilize something like somebody's sexuality as a moneymaker. That's fucking terrible.
Oh, of course it is. And for a lot of people out here that don't know, check out his matches, dude. He was phenomenal in seriously, when they say nobody better than Kanyon, he was amazing in the fucking ring. He was one of the greatest in there.
Well, we talked about it. I mentioned it earlier. One of his nicknames was the Innovator of Offense. I said it fine that time. When you look at the moves he did, there weren't people that would stylistically, when I was saying what he did was blending styles, he would do things like he would bounce him off the ropes like Lucha Libre and spin into neck breakers or skull crushers or brain busters. And he would combine moves and styles systematically in his timing that didn't necessarily go together. And that's what made him stand out so much, was that he would combine two moves and he had that it's like when people play really, really good at jazz and they can improv. And they just know what notes to play. They can feel the rhythm. They know it all. Kanyon was like improv jazz in the wrestling ring. Like he knew the combination of the moves, and he didn't necessarily have to know the combination of the moves. And that was what made him great the way he worked, because he could combine things and he could flow, and he would go in and out of his transitions. Mm-hmm. And I talk about timing a lot. And I said it in the Blood and Guts match last Wednesday, that if you want to see what good timing looks like, look at Nick Jackson's first exchange when he comes into the match. He works 4 different people in Blackpool Combat Club, like simultaneously. You know what I mean? Like he comes in and he handles one at a time. But the way he transitions it, and that key word is timing. Kanyon had that. What's up, man? What's up, Kai Tai? Smacked Raw in the house. One of our oldest and longest podcasting friends, Kyle Tyson, in the house. I love you, Bubba. Good to see you. But that was one of the things that Kanyon did so well is he could improv on the fly and he could adjust and move. So looking at him stylistically too, he wasn't a pushover in the ring. This isn't about us putting over a mediocre mid-card guy because he's got a dark story. This is somebody who could genuinely fucking work, man.
Yeah.
Like, he was quality.
Oh, yeah. And I'm telling you right now, out of everybody, I'll tell you right now, like, everybody we talked about, I don't put them over because, they're no longer with us. If you were mid-card, I'm going to say, yeah, you're a mid-card. A lot of people talked about China the same way. They said that she was like horrible, but to me, I still think she was one of the greats. I mean, first ever in the the men's Royal Rumble. She first ever female Intercontinental Champion. The same thing with Kanyon. Kanyon. Yeah, I just imagine if they jumped the gun, if they jumped it and they threw that out there at the first openly gay wrestler, WWE would have got a lot more. But then it makes you think about what actually happens backstage. I mean, I've had a whiff of it myself. I kind of, in a way, heard things and seen things. There's shit that happened, and it's not a joke. That shit does happen back there.
Kyle says China is often super underappreciated. We completely agree. We had an episode on Dark Botch Spots After Dark. We dedicated a whole episode to China, and we talked about how underappreciated she was in the big scheme of wrestling at the time. People don't talk about with China. I brought it up in that episode, Mike, about how she was the first woman in history to wrestle in a New Japan ring. Period. Founded in the 70s, guys. We're talking 30 years of wrestling history, and China was the first woman to ever wrestle in a New Japan ring. And people still sleep on who she was for the business.
So this is how I've been keeping track of this. Benoit was episode number 1. Episode number 2 was Owen Hart. Episode number 3. China. Episode 4 was Brian Pillman. This is Chris Kanyon, and still, we'll talk after this because we always keep this as a surprise. We don't let you guys know who's going to be next. Just like Goldberg, you got to wait until we tell you who's next.
Who's next? So closing thoughts on Kanyon, man. You got anything left that you want to talk about? Did we miss anything on your notes?
I think that I went through most of it. Like, the rest of it was like right off the top of my head.
Yeah.
All I can say is that he was a phenomenal talent. And for WWE to do
Goldberg.
the thing. But for them to do the things that they did to him, once again, it's in his book, but that was also published after he died, so we don't know the complete truth of what was actually done. Of course, right now, the saying with WWE is be a star, but back then in WWF, if you weren't it, you weren't it, and they're going to tell you to go fuck yourself. Not even nicely either. All in all, that we had a phenomenal talent that we lost too soon, and he would have completely, he would have flourished right now with everything going on and stuff like that. So we lost him way too soon. We lost him at 40, of course. I OD of depression medication. And most definitely seek help if you have it, just like I say on every other one. Don't hold it back. If you need to talk to somebody, talk to somebody. If that person is too busy, try to find another. If not, there's hotlines out there that you can sit there and just talk to and be completely anonymous. There's help out there. So most definitely look for it. And if you have friends that start showing these signs, most definitely, like, I don't care. You're a true friend. if you're willing to get them locked up for a while just to protect them. So.
Absolutely. Always ask for help. I'm going to get some banners put up for the next episode that talk about like in the US for mental health awareness and numbers you can call if you have stuff to talk about. So Mike's absolutely right. Great in-ring worker, Purcell, who struggled with a lot of demons and never truly got his roses while he was around. It's tough to end on such a sad note, Mike. Plug your stuff, man. Tell everybody where to find you, what you got going on with your social. Oh, what's up?
We don't have to do it at a sad note, because all we got to say is who's better than Kanyon.
Who better than Kanyon? Nobody better than you.
All right, you can catch me up. You can find me. I'm of course on Twitter. That's Shitty09MN. I never really plugged that. You can find me on TikTok. I haven't really been live as much, but trying to get better at being a little bit on there a little bit more. At All Wrestling for Life or Heel Mike. You can also have another TikTok, the Belt Collector Mike. If you want to see all these damn expensive titles, I don't know why I have, but I have because I love them. And you can find me right here on Box Bots and Chair Shots After Dark.
Boom shakalaka. I'll update you on Sunday night, guys, on Botch Spots and Chair Shots. Normal Botch Spots and Chair Shots. When the next episode of After Dark will be, me and Mike will do it. A few housekeeping notes before we sign off. If you are watching on Twitch at Rivet City Radio, give us the Jeff Bezos money. If you have Amazon Prime, you can use your Prime Gaming. You get some cool stuff there, but you also get a free Twitch subscription. Use it here. Give it to us. Give it to Creation World. Give it to Tim King and those guys. Give it to somebody who needs it. Jeff Bezos has too much money. Angry Lemonade. If you're into merch and you want a Botch Spots and Chair Shots shirt or a hoodie, check us out at Angry Lemonade at Botch Spots and Chair Shots. You want to join the Discord, hop on there. That's the off the top Discord. That's the everything for everything. If you're a Patreon patron, we're finalizing the VIP lounge for you guys. But the long awaited moment where I present to you guys this is the subathon information, ladies and gentlemen. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to start streaming at 7 p.m. on Sunday night for Botch Spots and Chair Shots, and we're going to stream until 9 p.m. and until the table spot starts. And then after the table spot, you'll get my ugly mug right back on the stream. And we're going to stream for 24 consecutive hours. Throughout this time, you can donate money on PayPal and, send us tips directly there. $1 for 3 minutes, $5 for 15 minutes, $20 adds an hour. If you're feeling really generous and you throw us a $25 tip at any point in the next, whatever it is, till Sunday, and in that first 24 hours, not only do you throw us a $25 tip, but you will get to pick a match or a show episode or a video game that I'll play for an hour of the stream. If you're on Twitch and you want to use bits, 1,000 bits adds a couple minutes, 500 bits or 100 bits, blah, blah, blah. You see, you can add bits time that way. Subs on Twitch. This is where Sean fucked me up, ladies and gentlemen, because tier 1 subs, $5 at 15 minutes. Sean subscribed to 10 and we had 2 before we started. So that's 12. So that right there is 3 full hours added to the stream right off the rip. So that will put us from 7 p.m. Sunday all the way up till paying dues with Jamie Rose on Monday. If you continue adding subs and times, it will continue to add time. We will put it up to 48 hours. So like and share and tell everybody what we're doing. Tell them to come get their subs in. If you sub on Patreon, not only will you add 30 minutes to the stream, if you sub before the stream or during the first 24 hours, you get to pick a match or show episode that we will watch together on the stream as a watch along. So if you sub to the Patreon, you get to dictate what I'll be watching. We'll end extra early just to make it harder. Thanks, Sean. You're a trooper. But subscribe to the Patreon, subscribe to the Discord, subscribe to the Twitch, send us the tips. subscribe to the subathon. Everything we're raising here is for the betterment of Rivet City Radio. It's going to pay for interviews. It's going to pay for new gear. It's going to pay for tickets and press passes. It's going to pay for the better enjoyment of what all the content you guys get here. That's what all of this will go to. So sub away, tell your friends, tell them to come get some quality wrestling content. Mike, you got anything else?
I just want to thank all you guys, man, because, honestly, when me and Will were talking about doing this, originally was only a one-off. And this was going to do Benoit and be able to talk about whatever. And if it wasn't for you guys, like, literally coming here and making it worth it, because if I only had, like, we only had 2 or 3 people watching, this probably wouldn't continue. Thank you, Will, for having me on here again, man, and giving this show a chance. And we're starting to grow it. We're developing it more. We're making it bigger. I'm happy to be on here with Rivet. I'm really happy to be on Botch Spots and Share Shots. And Allison, thank you for, thank you both for giving me that damn opportunity to jump on here and just have fun.
I love the shit out of you, Mike.
Yeah.
So fucking hard. But that's it, guys. That's all you get tonight. I'm sorry. We're done. It's been a long day for me. I've been streaming. I've streamed like 6 shows today and 2 interviews. It's been a ridiculous day. But remember, check it out. You ready for this? This is the cool part about being on an organized network. Tomorrow night, you get at 5 p.m. Central Time, you get the Indie Insider with Sean and CJ. Yours truly is going to be on there. We're going to be talking about some NWA wrestling. We're going to be dropping some really cool, some interview footage from some of the NWA talent that I've had a chance to interview. But the huge comeuppance, and this is me putting my boy over. He is one of the co-hosts of the Off the Top Network. He has become one of my best friends in podcasting. He is the Devon to my Bubba Ray Dudley. My boy Cam G debuts tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Central Time with The Boom with Cam G at 9 p.m. So check out Botch Spots and Share Shots. Thursday, we've got trivia. We've got just stuff every day, man, 7 days a week. Mike, you got anything for the people before we go home?
No, again, guys, thank you for the support. And continue watching, because the next episode is just going to get better. It's just going to grow. It's going to get bigger and bigger and better and better. And who knows? We're working on making it 2 shows a month instead of only 1. So
we might fucking do this. I don't even know. We do it whenever we want. We do what we want. We'll run this shit at 2:00 in the morning if we have to.
I don't want to put more work on you, or we'll make it a weekly one.
I love working with you, man. I don't give no fucks. But for my
here, that's what we need.
Do what?
We need Allison up here next.
We need to get Allison on an episode. We'll get her on an episode, something we can talk about. 2 a.m. Damn. Cage My IQ's like, I ain't staying up till 3:00 for that shit. I love you, Will, but not that much. But I appreciate you guys. I love y'all. Go to Patreon, subscribe, give us the bits, give us the dollars, give us the numbers so we can give you the best quality wrestling content of all time. Love you guys.
Don't forget to check out.
Boom. That's it. We're Audi 5000. Botch Spots and Share Shots After Dark. We out.